Hi, Timmy.
Hi,
Hello.
Timmy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Good. Are you ready for it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So what you're going to talk about?
Well, WebXR, and then with a focus on the AR stuff. And hopefully, if everything works, I could show it in my room here live on my phone.
Okay. Okay. So let's get started then. That's way
Yes.
more fun than us talking about it. Okay.
Probably.
Good luck.
If you need any help or whatever, we are in the background helping you out. So don't worry.
Okay. Okay.
I'll give you the screen yourself. Let me do it like this. So, no, not me.
Yes. Well, hello world. Hello everybody out there. Yes, today I'm going to give you a short introduction on how you can get augmented reality going through web technology. I'm not going into any details about how HTML works and JavaScript and CSS. I assume everybody knows a little bit about that. But yeah, it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. So I'm really excited that I could give this talk today. Are we showing my screen? Yes, there it is. First, a little bit about me. So my name is Timmy Kokke, but most people know me as Source Code online. So I probably use that name everywhere. Normally during the day, I work at Centric as a C# developer, doing also a little bit of JavaScript and TypeScript, mostly enterprise web apps and Angular, .NET Core. But at night, when everybody's asleep, when the children and my wife are just asleep, I sit behind my computer and start coding again, live. Kind of similar to what I'm doing today, using JavaScript. And I started to use a little bit of Python. Most of the time I'm using WebXR. But I'm a big fan of all modern web APIs, like Web Bluetooth and those kind of things. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP. So yeah. What is it that I'm going to talk about today? I want to give a little brief introduction on WebXR. What is WebXR? And then I'm focused a little bit on the AR side of things. Then I want to have a look at what is possible today. Then we go into some demos. And then we have a sneak peek into the future on what is coming, hopefully within the coming years. So WebXR, what is it? It's basically a standard to bring virtual and augmented reality to the web. I can use JavaScript to build experiences. It's an official W3C standard. It's kind of built on different features. So there's all kinds of different things in there that we'll go into detail in a bit. And it's available in pretty much all the big browsers, all the Chromium-based browsers for sure. Firefox has it behind the flag. The only big one that is missing still is Safari. But if you want an experiment with WebXR on an iOS device, you can use the WebXR viewer that Mozilla created. What I didn't include in this list, since I'm going to focus on the phone today, is all the hardware that's out there for virtual reality and mixed reality. It's working on that as well. I'm using WebXR on my Oculus Quest, for example, a lot. But the exact features that are available in WebXR differ a little bit per device. So WebXR today, what can we do with WebXR? First of all, we can do the normal VR stuff with controllers. But if we look at AR, there is tracking at this moment. So it can do the similar things that AR Core and AR Kit are doing with the plane detection. You can cast rays and detect at what point in the space you hit something, where you can place things. And there's also a DOM overlay, which you can use to lay your HTML elements on top of your augmented reality experience. Use cases are not that many right now. I think we slowly will see, since it's in the browsers right now, as an extension on normal websites, where you can just try out your, for example, furniture in your own living room. That's something I would see as a use case. Or you can try out glasses and that kind of stuff. That stuff is coming. Now, how can we do that? And I'm going to focus on A-Frame today. There are a couple of frameworks you can use. A-Frame is the most simple to use. And here you see a quick example, and I'm going over this right now, so we don't have to go over it again when we switch to the demos. In A-Frame, you have a scene, and within that scene, you create elements. And elements have attributes, just like plain HTML. And that's basically the whole thing you need to know before you can build an A-Frame application. This application will show a blue square, and this will be the starting point of the demos as well. Now, the great thing is that if you want to go into AR, if there is AR available on your device, at this point, your application could start using AR. You have a button to switch to VR and a button to switch to AR. And if you run this on your phone, you can switch to AR. Now, you might need to have a little bit more going on. And that's where feature detection comes in. And you actually require this to, if you want, for example, in this little example, you want to use the DOM overlay. If you want to use it, you really need to specify that this application requires that feature. Otherwise, the XR session underneath cannot be created. And this is also one of the starting points for the demo in a second. Last thing, A-Frame is built using components. So if you look at this, for example, that WebXR part is actually a component that is on the scene with some properties. In this case, I named an empty component. There are a lot of lifecycle methods in there, but the init and tick, maybe update, are the ones you probably will use when you create components for A-Frame. Now we're going to create a couple of components as well. But I think it is time to go into the demo. And what I want to do for the demo is try and recreate, maybe a little bit simpler, one of the biggest AR games out there, Pokemon Go. Now I cannot use the name Pokemon, so I changed it up a little bit. But we'll get there in a second. We start at the beginning, and then we slowly descend into the different features, and hopefully in the end we could catch some critter walking or standing in the room. So let's go into the demo. You should be able to see my desktop right now. I think you do. So I created an empty project here. And at first you might think, whoa, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is complex. This is basically my own setup where I use that I use for every project. It just has the basics in there. And what's really important is this index HTML and the index JavaScript file. And those get compiled and moved over to a part that we can run or deploy. In this HTML file, I added a script. I grabbed the absolute latest version of A-Frame from a CDN. But you can always also use this through npm, for example. I included the main JavaScript file, which will be compiled later. I added the scene here, as I shown in the example, and a box. I just realized in the previous example it was blue. In this example, it is red. Now, to be sure we can have the tracking, I'm just going to add a code snippet here, where we specify a little bit to WebXR that we want to use the local floor space, and it needs local floor. If it cannot do the normal floor tracking, you will get an error if you say this application requires this feature. But I think we should be able to go. Let me move some stuff out of the way here. There, let's make it a little bit bigger. So if I'm going to go and refresh this, if I go and switch to my phone, you should be able to see the screen from my phone now. And this is the application running with that little red cube. Now, as you can see in the bottom, there are an AR and a VR button. Because my device supports AR, I can use that. Now, when I hit this AR button, hopefully it's going to work. Yes, now you can see my room, and it placed that AR or that red cube on the button on the floor there. Zoom in. Now it didn't calculate where the floor is. Because I said local floor, it assumed I am standing, and it made an estimation where the floor would be. So right now, this cube is lying below the floor a little bit because I'm sitting down. But in a few moments, we're going to add a little bit of code. And in the end, we should have it sitting on the floor. So let's get back to the code. So the first thing I want to do is explain a little bit on how you can, how you know from code that you are running in AR mode, which is something you will have, you will need when you build an application for AR. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add the first component, and I want to create something that we can hide objects when we are in AR. I always name my components component.js. I also need to include it here, so I'm just going to import that file. So now it's getting compiled, and in here I'm going to add a code snippet. So here we have the first component that is going to interact with augmented reality. We have that we register the component hide in AR. We only use the init function in this case. And we're going to create an event listener to the scene. You can from anywhere in your project, you can access your scene object just by calling scene on the element. When the enter VR event happens, I'm going to remember if the object was invisible or not. I noticed that sometimes you have objects in your scene that are invisible, and you don't want them to show up after you were running it in AR. Now, if this event happens whenever you switch to AR, but also when you switch to VR, I think they should rename this event to enter XR maybe. But this is when you press one of the two buttons. When you switch to AR, we can check that if we are running in AR mode. Then we set the visibility of whatever object this attribute is on, this component is on, to false. Same thing, when we exit VR, we set the visibility to true. Now let's apply this to our scene. So I'm going to, well, let's clone this one. I'm going to create a blue cube. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. Let's move it out of the way. Now it should automatically refresh. Let me make sure this works. So we are back to my phone screen. Now when I switch to AR, the blue one should disappear. And it didn't. And that is because I forgot to add hide in AR. Here. Save, it automatically refreshes the screen. My phone keeps complaining it wants to go to Google Cardboard, but I'm not using that anymore. So now the blue cube is gone. This event is something you will probably use throughout your applications quite a lot when you want to hide things in AR or make things show up. I've got another small example where I use the same events later. Let's try and add something to the floor. Let's make sure we detect the floor. We're going to add the hit test. We need to add that to the required features, otherwise it doesn't work. And I'm going to add another component. New file. Let's call this hit test component.js. And let's drop in another code snippet. Now, this one is kind of complex. But everything that you might ever need is in here already. By the way, we'll make sure this code will be available online, and then you can just if you want to do anything with this, you can just reuse this same component. In this case, I've used another way of detecting when we go into XR mode, and this is one level deeper into the system. It's checking if, in this case, if the session ended. We just reset everything. If the session starts, if we go into the AR session, or the XR session, we grab the session. There's another event in here. This event will trigger when we touch something in the scene. When we touch the floor, that is when we fire this event. When this event is fired, and I just emit the same event again with the position. So I just can listen to this event from other places and reuse that. There's a little bit of code here that's just checking the reference space and the local for. Not that important to discuss right now. This one is more important. So every single tick, it is checking if the scene is in AR mode and if we have a viewer space, if that is set. If not, we don't need to do anything. We just go out of the loop. Just return and continue whatever we need to render. If we have a viewer space, we can check if we have a pose, and a pose is just something in the scene where we look at. If we have the hit test available, we're going to request the results, and if we have a result, that means we have successfully cast a ray from the camera into the scene, and we hit a real floor object or wall object. Now, I believe that in the future, they might want to add the same construction for other objects. So in like the 3D objects in your scene. Right now, this hit test only checks for the real floor. There is some positioning data in there that gets transformed, and we get the position. At that point, I update the element. So if we attach this hit test object to something, for example, a reticle or a cube or whatever, we position it at the position where we hit the floor. That way we can, for example, move a cube, which we're going to do in a second. But also we fire an event that if we hit something, we can listen to something somewhere else, and we can just, without having to rewrite this complex code every time, we can just start using it. Now, with this out of the way, we should be able to just pass it, drop it on here, and we need to add the components to the index.js as well. Otherwise, it won't be loaded. Now my app should automatically refresh. So now when we go into AR, the blue cube should disappear, and the red cube, yeah. Now we detected the floor, and now you see that this cube stays in the center of the screen, but it's just moving along the floor. And I think if I look at the door, it might eventually. No, it doesn't. This afternoon it detected the door as well, so I could move it up and down the door. But you see, if the floor ends, or thinks the floor ends, it stopped moving. And this way, you can, for example, have a reticle on the floor, and when you tap something, you can place something at that position. And now you see the cube is kind of sitting really on the floor. Now this is fun, but it doesn't look like a game yet. So let's remove these 2 cubes. And we're going to add an empty entity. So everything in A-Frame is inherited from an entity. I'm going to add an empty one. I give this an ID. If I can test. And I'm going to add this hit test to this. Now we have something in our scene with the hit test we can follow and we can use to do cool stuff with. I also want to have some models in here. So I'm just going to grab this little folder and copy it in here. Now there's a few models in there we can use. And what we want to do, I always have one of those in my games. It's a game component. We are at 4 already. So this is the game component. And this game component, if it's activated, I want to have this only run once if we hit something, or if it's plays something. So it just grabs that element by ID hit test. What we just added. It's listening for the hit test event. So every time we successfully cast a ray, this event triggers. Then we check if it's activated. If it's not activated, we just skip. I added a very simple way of checking. I think it's 1 in 20 chance that this is true, and then we play something. So it's kind of random where the object is placed every time where we restart application. Then we create a Mokipon, just simple HTML. It's a water pipe Mokipon. I load a model, set the scale, position it at where we have detected the floor, and then I rotate it 45 degrees. That way, it's just rotated. It just looks a little bit better. And then I just add it to the scene. This combination of creating elements and adding elements to the scene is something that will occur a lot in A-Frame. Every time you want to add something to your scene, you just create an entity, set some attributes, and drop it into your scene. And we need to add or import the game component here as well. And we need to add it here. Let me quickly check if I'm not forgetting anything. Nope. I think it should work. So every time I save, it automatically reloads. So that's pretty cool. Now there's nothing on my visible on my phone. Nothing until I switch to AR, and hopefully, if it's correct, it should place when it detects the floor. There's a 1 in 20 chance. There is 1. So there we have our first Mokipon. It's kind of blocky, but I think it's it looks pretty cool. But yeah, we want to catch it as well. That's the whole point of Mokipons, right? You want to catch them. And therefore, we need to have the DOM overlay. Now, instead of adding a whole lot of code and stuff again, I'm just going to switch projects here in my Visual Studio Code for a second. So it's the same project, but this one is just a little bit more in time, and the whole DOM overlay is in here already. Let's start with the index HTML. I also added some shadows in here, which make the object even more stuck to the ground. If you just add a little bit of shadow, it's in there. It just stuck to the ground more. The question is, how do you get these glow effects? Yes, the question I get asked a lot. This is my visuals. This is Synthwave 84 is the theme from Visual Studio Code. Yeah, and it's kind of my go-to Visual Studio Code theme when I'm not working. So when I'm at work, everything is boring and gray, and then when I get home and create the cool stuff, I need a cool theme as well. It also reminds me a little bit of the cyberpunk genre with the neons and those kind of things. I really like it. And it's in the, if you just Google Synthwave 84 theme, you will hit it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, we have the same game object, game component here added to the scene. Local floor is in there. We also added the DOM overlay in this case, because we need that in here. There's a little bit of HTML here. That's the DOM overlay. It has an ID, which is used as the overlay element. And I have that same hit test entity here. These two things are the lights, not that special, just a directional light that casts shadow and an ambient light to just make it really bright again. There's also a little bit of CSS on here. Now, one thing I was missing when I was building this is that there is no CSS that is added for when you are in AR mode. So what I did to get past that is, let me check my components here. What's up here? This is what I was talking about a few minutes ago. I also created this event listener for the enter VR and the exit VR. If it's an AR mode, I just add a class to the body, and when we exit VR or AR, then we remove that attribute, and that way I can just add CSS, and just with a simple check, I can have things appear or disappear, or do things whenever we are in AR mode or not. I also added an image to the scene, which is also something, and I updated the game component. The button we can click to capture the Pokemon, Mokipon, sorry. It's just button place, just basic HTML or JavaScript. We grab the element. I add a click event listener. When we click it, I search for the element with the water pie. That's this ID we set here. And then I change the model to a Moki cube. The rest is pretty much the same, except I also add a plane for the shadow when the Mokipon is added to the scene. Did I forget to mention anything else? No. Now this starts to look complex because there was a lot of code going on. If you have written two components, you notice that it's all the same every time you create elements and set attributes. Yeah, let's see if this works. Now I do have to restart. App for a second. There we go. One second. There we go. There we have it. We have our own Mokipon. Now, there's nothing. Normally, you would have something going on here if it's a real game, but we're only focusing on the AR part today. So we have the Mokipon, and now we need to switch to AR. Now, we should have a button appear in AR. We should have a Mokipon, and if you press the button, hopefully we can catch it. So we go into AR. Now you see the DOM overlay still. The image is on top there. The cube is there, and hopefully it will appear again. Yes. A wild water pie appeared. Now, as you can see, the shadow makes it really on the floor. Now let's see if we can catch it. Yes. Yes, we got it. We got our first Mokipon. Yeah, and that's basically the whole thing. I'm just curious if there are any questions out there for on the code. Otherwise, we go back to the last slides. Now, this code, it is not on GitHub at this point. It will be probably later today. And if you have any questions later at any point, just Google source code and ask away. No problem. Let's go to the last slides then. I see a question. Is there a suggested polygon count limit when importing 3D models? I don't have a suggestion. I don't think polygons alone are the issue. If you have one model, you can go pretty deep with the amount of polygons. But you have to, if you have this running on a phone, it is not that powerful, and the scenes might not get too complex. You have to really do a lot of testing if you're using your own models. I will always try to make them as low as possible, and if that works, you can always push a little bit more. How am I sending it to the phone? Yes, well, that's I'm just on my Wi-Fi. It's running a local development server here with Webpack, just the Webpack dev server. But I did a little trick to make it run on HTTPS. I'm using this domain, Kokke.nl. But the DNS is set up that it's pointing to my local IP address. So I can just browse here from any device that's on my network, and it always redirects to my machine. And I can use HTTPS with wildcards and SSL certificates and everything like a real application. But if you would open this on your machine, you will probably get nothing, or oh, you cannot see my screen now. So yeah, I was talking about this this domain, that Kokke.nl. This is where it's running, but that's just my local network. Oh yeah, I don't think we need to have much. Just thinking if I can do anything else. If there are questions, just feel free to ask. I only have, I think, one more slide, and that is what is coming in the future. So WebXR it was going kind of slow in the last few years, but by the end of last year, since Chrome 79, it is implementing the Chromium, and that's when it's starting to really take off. A lot of features got added already, but these are the ones that are coming somewhere in the future, and I'm really excited about. For example, the hands input. Now, the hands input might not be very useful in AR. Maybe in the mixed reality. I haven't seen anything on that part. If you have a HoloLens with WebXR and the hands input, you might do the hands tracking. But the Oculus Quest can also do hand tracking, and I think that's where this is going with the hands tracking. Computer vision is something I'm really, really waiting for, to get that into the standard. And with computer vision, it should be possible to do image tracking or object tracking within your VR scene without having to do any kind of crazy stuff yourself. That's the whole point. Light estimation is also one that is hopefully coming pretty soon. So now I had to add I added just a light on top, and the shadow wasn't really showing like the shadow of my real room. But with light estimation, it should be possible to detect where light is coming from and the amount of light that is in your room. And that would really, really make your 3D models fit into your scene. Anchors is something that is coming up, where you can place something in your world, and know where it is, and keep it there and share that place with other people. So we can have a multi-user experience. We all look at the same object that is sitting in the same spot. Geo-alignment is one that can be pretty useful as well, where an object is just placed in a certain direction, no matter in what direction the phone is looking. And the last one, real-world geometry, is where right now you can detect a floor, you can detect a wall. There are some examples where you can visualize those as well, like the demos you see in ARKit and ARCore. But on an iPad, for example, with the LiDAR stuff that's going on, or with the HoloLens where you can detect your room, that is something that is coming in the future to WebXR as well. And then you can start thinking about object occlusion, where things can be placed behind objects in your 3D world. I think that's something that is really, really cool. Now, do I have anything else here? No, I'm not sure where the slide is here. Nope, I don't know. And that was all I had, actually. I was expecting the demos to go wrong. That's always happening when you do a presentation and your demos go wrong. But they went pretty smooth. So if there are any questions, please ask them right now.
Hey, Timmy.
Hey.
That went well.
Yes, it went pretty well, yeah.
Yeah, even the demos, you were afraid of that it may be
yeah.
due to some of them not going well, but it really went great.
Yeah, I had it happening during live streams, for example, where I was working on the phone, it just broke and it couldn't get it to work anymore.
Yeah, I think it's incredible with WebXR what's possible without having very expensive devices like HoloLens or others.
No.
You can do so much with your phone.
Yeah. Yeah, and it runs everywhere. If you have a desktop device, you can run it in VR mode possibly, and you can or just view a 3D model, and you can go all the way to HoloLens if you have one, and work with that.
Cool. Thank you for doing the session for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you actually kicked off the first GlobalXR talk. So for the next part, the next session will start at 10 minutes before 8. And that one will actually be in AltSpace VR. That's an host panel done by Jesse McCulloch, program manager. You can follow that in AltSpace VR through virtual reality using a 3D headset or using the AltSpace VR desktop application, only on Windows, sorry. And we will also stream that session directly to YouTube. So watch YouTube for the next session to start there. So thanks all for now.
And thanks, Timmy, for this awesome session. Great.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.